Hi there, my name's Rob Hardy and I'm assistant head here at Caulfield School. And one of my responsibilities in school is the options processes and timetable and the things that are associated with that. Now, this presentation is to give you the information that we're giving to students, so to giving to current year 9 about the options process, to hopefully answer a number of questions that come up, but also give you an idea of what kind of questions you might like to ask still. Now, on Thursday in school, we're running an options event, which should allow all students and you as parents to join and ask any questions that you have about specific subjects or about the process in general. And it is a chance that we are making sure that we're doing everything possible to get the most out of. So hopefully this presentation will give a lot of the information if you're unable to attend on that night. But for those you are planning to attend, hopefully this will give you quite a lot of the key messages that are going to students, but also the information you can use to help advise them. Now, first thing is that very few students at this age will have a clear career path, but if they do, there are options advice for them. So again, if they want, say, for example, a medical career, then we would be advising triple science. If they know that they would like a career working in sports science, then perhaps looking at our PE GCSE course would be sensible. Similarly, if they want to travel the world, we'd advise more of the languages courses. And if they've got those ideas, now, most students won't, and it'll be focused on what subjects do they enjoy and what subjects are going to help them keep a breadth of subject, not to narrow their options too much. Now, what we want to be careful of is that they may really love, I've given examples there of sciencey subjects, but actually we need to keep them a broader curriculum as they're still developing as learners as they go into the age of 16. It's at A level, our next choice, A level, our key stage 5 choices, that there's a little bit more narrowing, but at this stage we'd encourage that broad balanced curriculum that we try to offer here at Court of Hills. Now, this is a version of the presentation that I've done to year 9 in their assembly today, but there's some key things that making choices, it is important that the student is making the choices themselves as much as possible. Now, some of them may be quite indecisive, and that's where we as teachers and you as parents and carers will help to inform those decisions. Now, the ones that students find difficult on this, they're not always brilliant at knowing what they're good at. So helping advise them on that. They're better at judging what they enjoy, and it's trying to make a balance between those things. So they might have a strong aptitude for languages, but not be that keen on them. But try and encourage that balance in what they're picking. Now, also thinking about that next stages of courses, we have a broad range of subjects here that lead to those next stages. So we're really clear. Now, later in this presentation, I'll also talk about the English Baccalaureate and that course, that choice of courses that's around that, which is one of the things the government are very keen on. But we're talking about providing balance now to give that greater choice still later. So we're trying to keep a broad curriculum for all students. Now, we advise that you are their first point of call of helping them make these decisions, and certainly where they need to pick 4 subjects and they need to pick 1 subject from each of the blocks, it is really important that making those choices, sometimes there is some compromise to be had, and that is partly us as teachers and you as parents' role. It is important they have the right information. If they aren't able to come to live event on Thursday, are they looking up online all the information? Because it is on the website and it is also hosted on the SharePoint site, which is in school. Making sure they understand if they're opting for one of our newer subjects, one of the ones that they haven't studied in year 9, are they making the most of that information? Now, the other key thing as parents, I think, is to help them not be too much influenced by others. They may say, oh, I want to do that subject because all my friends are doing it. That may not mean that they're in a class with all their friends, and try and get them to focus on the subject and the learning itself rather than friends or teachers or those kind of things, which we can't guarantee. And that can quite often, the students who pick that route, and then especially those who don't end up with their friends in friendship groups, can struggle with subjects that actually they don't have as much interest in. Now, for you, all the information is externally as parents is on the school website. So this video will be hosted there, but also the information about each subject, the combinations of subjects, all that information is there. Also, the contact details of subject leaders. So if you have follow-up questions, especially if you're not able to make it on the evening, that's where you get that information. Now, students have access to this, which is called the SharePoint site, which also has links in school, and they've been shown how to use that in their computer science classes. This gives them, again, that information all in one place with some extra videos and things that we've thrown in as well that we can host there. Now, there is the options evening I mentioned, and the option process closes on Monday the 28th of February, and that date might seem quite soon, but that's to try and press and make sure that students make a decision in a fairly short space of time so that actually they're not putting the decision off. Prolonging that process, we've had experience that doesn't help those students who are undecided. So actually trying to make this a quite slick, quick process actually helps students to be more decisive and make better choices for themselves. Now, I would highlight, if you weren't able to meet a member of staff, please do email. And staff here love talking about their subjects. It's infectious and it makes me want to study pretty much all of them. Please come and ask those questions if you're unable to. Now, all students at Corfe Hills have a core curriculum they have to study. So they study 2 qualifications in English, English literature and English language. They do a maths GCSE and they have to do science, and all our students do combined science, but there is an option. One of the options they could pick is to do triple science. Now, triple science is more science. It is still that greater building block, and we'll talk about that in a minute. Also, students have 2 lessons of PE a fortnight, so that actually that's concentrating on their wider well-being and making sure they're physically active in school. Now, I said we're focused on triple science. Triple science is very suitable for students who love science. That's an obvious one, but also for those who might be thinking of doing veterinary science or medicine or other science-based careers like engineering. Now, is the best preparation for science A-level, but you can take science A-levels without doing triple science. And it is, if they've got a keen interest, it is offered at both higher and foundation. It's not just for students who are going to be aiming at those very high grades. So for my science veterinary work, it is also for students. If they really love science, there is a good offer, and that gives them more time studying those subjects in greater depth. Now, the rest of our options fall into different categories, but we have 2 types of courses that are on offer. So the first one are our GCSE courses, and they range from the new ones there being for students would be business, for example, business, media studies, and those are subjects that they can pick, and they will be able to take a GCSE into those subjects. They generally have a higher focus on end of course exams, except some courses have what are called project-based coursework elements or non-examined assessment alongside it. There's a good range of courses there, and students find those GCSE courses both challenging and well supported. What we also offer is quite a broad range of vocational courses in engineering, hospitality and catering, health and social care, sports studies. Now, those courses are suitable for all our students, and again, they have a greater balance that there's probably a larger coursework element, but also less examined assessment, but also the focus is different. Now, to explain the focus, I would say go and have a look at the information on the website and speak to teachers. There is a difference between the PE course, GCSE, and the sports studies OCR, and the best people to explain that are our PE department as the experts on that. There is also listed there the PSE, the Personal Social Effectiveness course, and that is run through our SEN department, and Miss Ratcliffe would be the person who would speak to you about that. We would recommend students for that, and so you should have been contacted if that is an appropriate route for your child. Now, one of the things we encourage is we don't want students to over-specialise. So even if they feel they're going to be a doctor, or they feel they're going to be a professional sportsman in the future, those courses we need to have a breadth. So we ask all students at Caulfield to study one of French, geography, history, or Spanish. We do that to keep that breadth and balance in the curriculum. And we've seen through years and years that that is a really successful route here at Caulfield, where students go on to do well by studying that broad range of subjects. Part of the reason we do that is the encouragement of the English Baccalaureate. Now, the English Baccalaureate is that by 2025, the government wanted 90% of students to be studying this as a way of making sure that they have access to a curriculum that really aims at the highest. Now, I would say that it is something we'd advise students to look at, but we wouldn't say recommend that it is right for all students. It does have evidence that it provides a foundation for students to then go on to higher learning, so for university courses mainly, and it increases the likelihood that students will stay on in full-time education. Now, the English Baccalaureate itself is that they do English language and literature, maths, science, as we said, that all students study in our core curriculum, and then both of geography or history and a language, and our languages here are French and Spanish. If you did all of that, it would be seen as the English Baccalaureate, that you've got that broad, balanced curriculum that all students, the government would advise do it. Now, what we'd say is that we'd encourage students to look at that, and especially our academic students, that it does give a balance to it. But I think there is also a balance that it needs to be the students that the subjects that they like the most, and that ones that we feel they're successful on. This is very successful for some students. Other students, it would be the wrong route to put them on. So we do say that students need to do geography, history, or a language. We don't enforce both here at Caulfield. If you have any further questions on that, please do contact and ask. Now, due to trying to keep that broad and balanced nature of things, one of the things we do is there are certain courses we wouldn't advise taking together, and some they're not allowed to take together because they're too similar in terms of content. Now, those are there on the presentation, but certainly, for example, it would not be sensible for us as a school to allow a student to take PE and the sport award because they're too similar in terms of the actual content that's studied, and it doesn't give that breadth that we are encouraging at GCSE. Now, as parents, part of the final process is that students need to complete their options online. Now, this is actually, the options online are done through the student app on Sims. Now, they can access it in their school account online, or if they have the app, they can do it through that. We have put it on the SharePoint, the link that they need to click as well. And if they do it in school, it links really nicely. As a parent, this is a bit odd, but you can view their choices. You can even approve their choices by pressing a button saying you approve, but you can't actually do them for them. So it is that the students need to log in the student account to do it. Now, this parental approval button is something we can't disable, but we don't use that at Caulfield. That's the idea that all of you would have to approve the options. It's just an extra process we don't do. But be aware that that is an option, but it is something that you don't need to do. Now, when they log on to the main option site, there is this big lot of text there that goes through the process. Now, most of this is more easy to see once I show you it. The key things there is you need to save it at the end, and that you guys can view choices, but these are basically now the guidance I'm about to give in the next bit that we're going to go through. Now, when they come to each block, they will be presented with a set of options like this. Now, if they click on the subject itself, it makes the option turn blue. And that means they had picked that in block A, they want to pick art, craft and design. If they click on the reserving box, that they need to pick reserves as backups, and I'll go to that in more detail in a minute, is that would turn orange to show it's a reserve. Now, if you clicked any further options, it would then highlight that that is a mistake and you can't submit that you can't pick two things in one block. Now, this is key, that our option blocks are set up based on our staffing model at the moment. Now, we will review these to make sure they suit the year group, but at the moment they will need to pick one subject in blue from each option and then some reserves across the subjects. Now, point out again, triple science, that option we spoke at the beginning. Again, you'd have to click on the option in one of the things blocks, which would mean it's in that block they would take the option. Now, Here are the blocks. Now, these are available on the website as well in a much nicer looking form than this. But for each of these, what we've got is the information that goes out to students, and it is available there. Now, the key thing is they're only allowed to pick one thing from each block, and we've tried as much as possible to make as many different combinations possible as we can. The absolute key thing on this is that we review this at the end. So sometimes we can overpredict or underpredict interest. So we might say, for example, there's 3 business classes on. We might get interest for 4 business classes, and then as a school we review to see if we can do that, or we might only get interest for 2 business classes, and we go, right, we need to review, and that can mean changes after the process. And it's that bit which means that this next bit is super important. What we need to know from students is not only what their options are in each block, but reserves if we're not able to fulfill that. And finally, the order of preference. So with this student on the board, art is their #1 choice. And so we would try and guarantee that that student's in art. Now, if another student had listed it as, say, option 4, that student wouldn't get the same priority. Now, let's explain that a bit more. We don't do first come, first serve here at Caulfields. We don't say if you pick your options first, then you get all your first choice and this person who's gone later in the process go. We don't do that. What we look at is those preferences. So we'll look at all the option 1s first, who's opted it as their first possible choice. We'll try and guarantee they get that subject because they've shown the highest interest in it. And then we work our way down. Now, more often than not, we're able to get the vast majority of students their 4 choices. However, if we can't, we need to then review the reserves, which are the orange subjects there. So again, if this student couldn't join drama, I'd be looking, right, can I get them in a business group? And it would be, we might move around blocks to make that work, but it would be that that's where we'd use this preference list to make sure that we're looking at which subjects work. I would say, as advice for parents, we should be encouraging this bit is the bit that we can help them with, is that actually, once they've done their options in each block, can you get them in an order that is your preference, and also make sure you've got at least 2, but preferably 3 reserves, just to make sure that we can get the information to them. Now, what this allows us to do as a school is make sure as many students as possible we get in the right courses in the right places. But it also gives us that really good idea of what how we make prioritize which students go in which groups. So please make sure this part of the process is something that you're aware of. Now, other key bits, very simple one, is you must press save. Make sure they've done one of those subjects, French, geography, history, or Spanish. And if there's any combination that didn't work, can you leave a note at the bottom for if you need to? So say, for example, that you couldn't get the ideal first choice combination because of the way the blocks are constructed. You say, actually, they really want to study these 2 subjects, but it didn't work, or these 3 subjects, it didn't work. And in our review process, if we put on an extra class or move classes around, that's where we do those processes. Now, remind you, the deadline for submissions is straight after half term on the Monday, and from the Tuesday, we would then use these. Now, reminder also that this presentation is to help give you information to then hopefully come in to school on Thursday and have questions that you may want to get answered and thinking about that process. Subject specialists can answer that. Hopefully also other member staff such as myself will be able to help. Now, from Tuesday, the 1st of March, we start reviewing choices, and we normally get as many students as possible their first possible choices, but there can be changes at that point. If I have a course that has very low numbers, sadly, it is the case that sometimes we're not able to run that. Sometimes we change the option blocks to allow more people to get their first choice courses. But then after that process is finished, subject changes can prove more difficult, and it has to be if a class is full that we will then have to use it. So this initial process, this first choice, is where really we try and get as much of this to work for the cohort as possible, much as this to work for year 9 as possible. Now, I know it can seem a daunting process, but it's a really lovely process. It's a process where students start that journey towards, in our way, sounds really sad saying it this way, but leaving us as sixth formers who are super successful and go on to some amazing things. I'm looking forward to seeing hopefully as many of you as possible on Thursday. If you do have questions, please do contact or just let us know things that you need to know. And thank you very much for your time. Bye.